No. We gotta start over. Yeah, this one, I feel like this guy is faulty sometimes. Have you experienced that with other people?
Sometimes
It's this one?
on the left, this seems to be, but
Weird.
try. Okay, this is take 3 now.
No! I had such a feeling. I knew that was coming. Ah!
Whoa. But one pops earlier. What? You're like a bomb technician. Oh, I hate that. You're disgusting.
I love everything about that video. Everything about it. Why is it so good to the soul to watch other people scream in fear? Is that sadistic? Is that wrong? Ah, we love it. You love it. It is good. I'm pretty sure they had to edit out some cuss words out of that. And be truthful here. If you were there, would you have peed yourself? That happened? Some of you would. Guaranteed. Some of you would. How you doing? Everybody all right? Glad you're here. You know, we're living in a time like filled with stress, filled with anxiety, and we know this because of a few reasons. We know this because it's said that anxiety is the #1 mental health issue in America of people of all ages. You know this more than anybody. They said that 1 in 5 teenagers deal with severe anxiety or depression, something that's debilitating. And more than that, face daily anxieties. You know, prescription drugs are skyrocketing, they're up. We live in anxious times, and you might be a part of the generation that faces this more than any other generation has in all of history. I read this stat that they took children today, and they said that the children today are facing the same amount of stress as a psychological patient did in the 50s. Congratulations. You're part of a tremendous generation dealing with fear. Isn't that cool? Yeah, you know this. That you're facing stress and pressure maybe more than any other generation that we know in our history. Some of that pressure is placed on you by yourselves, but I think a lot of it is placed on you by culture, by the society that we're living in. We live in super anxious times, and you know it. Well, I was thinking of a way to describe how anxiety works in my mind, at least how it makes sense to me. And there's a toy that I loved growing up as a child called a big wheel. Did anybody have a big wheel growing up? A couple of you did. I loved my big wheel. This is not it, I don't think. But it's so cool. It's not meant for guys like me at this age and size, I don't think. I had to take the things off so it fits, but the big wheel was sweet. It'd be something that I could ride around with my homies in the hood, cruise around a little bit. If you notice that the rims here are pretty sharp, it's got some gauges on it. I had to take the seat off the back because I wouldn't fit. And if you had like an advanced version, they had this e-brake. Did you ever have the e-brake where you can like cruise as fast as you can, pull the brake, skid a little bit? It's awesome. Well, what I found with the classic big wheel is there's this significant design flaw with this timeless toy. And if you had one of these, you know what this design flaw is. And you usually found out at the worst times. You found out this design flaw whenever there's a gang of bullies chasing after you and you needed to get away quickly. There's a design flaw with the big wheel. You knew this design flaw when you're in the middle of the street and there's a car coming and you had to get out of the way real fast. Another design flaw issue. And you know this anytime you had to ditch the fuzz. Fuzz is code word for the cops. For some of you that had to get out of there real quick because you're a lawbreaker. And you figured out that there's a design flaw. And the design flaw, I'll try to show you. This is the design flaw right here. I'm trying to move as fast as I can, but the design flaw is that the front wheel and the two back wheels are made of plastic. Plastic is not the best traction forming concept, and so this is what happens when you try to move. Now, if I was a little lighter, maybe I would move a little bit faster, but the same is true that over time, once you start using this thing, eventually, like any type of traction that you do have on this tire, it goes away real fast. And when you need to get away, you can't. The big wheel is kind of a disappointment when you need to escape wherever you're at. That was uncomfortable. The big wheel is a very good picture for me of what anxiety is. Anxiety is this. It's spinning our wheels without traction. It's where we have thoughts and ideas that are going through our mind, but we make no progress with them. We kind of come back to the same ideas over and over again. Have you been there before? That you return to your ideas, but you don't seem to have any movement with them. You don't seem to change them. You come back to them. And we've all had these ideas before. We all have momentary fear. You have momentary fear if you're in the dark and you hear something or see something real fast and you're scared. You have momentary fear if like a spider lands on your face. You have momentary fear if you see a clown and you scream like a child. That's normal. Those are just normal fears that we all have. We all have momentary stress. You have momentary stress when there's a test coming, when like right around the corner is a playoff game and you got to prepare for it. Or maybe like you have a job interview. You're an upperclassman, you have your first job, and you're going to try to perform really well. We all have moments of worry. Worry comes when you lost a cell phone and you got to find it, and like you're in full-fledged panic mode. Worry comes when your dog goes missing, or if you feel like you totally botched your driving exam and you're not sure yet because you haven't had the results. Anybody totally botched their driving exam? Get that? A couple of you did. I was really close to failing that. Those are all momentary, and they're actually really normal. But this conversation goes deeper. I want to take us like beyond the conversation about momentary stress, fear, and worry, and into a mindset of anxiety. I want to talk about a mindset of anxiety. I love what this author says about anxiety and fear. He describes it like this, Max Lucado. He says, anxiety and fear are cousins, but they're not twins. It means they're related, they're very similar. And all throughout our panic attack series, we'll talk about fear and we'll talk about anxiety, and we'll use those terms interchangeably. But there's a subtle difference between the two. It's this, that fear sees a threat, but anxiety just imagines one. It's like fear sees the clown and screams because there shouldn't be a clown right there, but anxiety just imagines one. That's the distinction between those two. See, there's a battle in the brain. We all have this battle in the brain. And this is personal for me because most of my life, I've been inside my own head a little bit. I've been inside my own thoughts. Anybody relate to that? Anybody that just, You just continue to think and think and think and overthink and rethink. But that's been me. And sometimes my thoughts have been like a big wheel. I've just been spinning, spinning, spinning without any traction. And here's the problem, is that when you're in your own thoughts and you're spinning long enough without any traction, eventually over time it forms a groove. It forms a groove, and that impacts your life. I'll describe what I mean by these grooves. You know that you're finding yourself kind of in a mental groove when for some reason you've got all these thoughts going on and you can't sleep. You ever have a problem sleeping? You ever have a problem getting to sleep or staying asleep, or you can't wake up? You sleep all the time? And sometimes that's the case because you've got all these thoughts rolling around in your head that have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and instantly you have thoughts in your mind and your heart starts racing and you feel kind of this weight? Ever been there before? It's a groove that's starting to form because thoughts are moving over and over again without traction. Or maybe it's gotten in the way of your progress. Have you ever had a hard time focusing? Had a hard time staying energized and motivated because your mind is in a million different places. Maybe even as you're sitting right here, your mind is in a million different places, and it's hard to stay right where it's supposed to be on one thing at a time because your thoughts are coming in like a flood. Or have you ever had so many thoughts going on that you just made yourself sick? Have you ever worried yourself, like literally sick? Maybe there's a test coming up, or there's something big in your life, or you just got news and you knew that it was maybe a bad situation with your family, that you might have to move. There could be some relocation, and then you worried about what was going to happen. And through that worry, your body shuts down. Like it tells you, kind of like a car would tell you that you're overheating, and you just stop. Have you been there before? Well, here's a group of students. They're going to share some of the ways that they have a battle in the brain. Maybe you can relate.
I get anxious not knowing if she likes me back or not.
I get nervous when someone hands me the aux in the car because I never know what to play.
I get nervous whenever I see any type of math word problem.
I get nervous thinking about a first date.
I get anxious when I feel unprepared for something that is a big deal.
I feel nervous speaking in front of a big crowd of people.
One thing I worry about is getting good grades.
I get nervous when I meet a new person and I just don't know what to say to them.
I get really anxious when I have a test the next day and it's not multiple choice.
I feel anxious when someone puts me on the spot.
I get anxious whenever I talk about my past before I became Christian.
I get really nervous when I have to merge on the freeway.
I get anxious when I don't know the plan.
I get anxious when I don't exceed in sports and I'm scared I'm gonna let my parents down.
I worry about an injury affecting my season.
I worry about not living up to my parents' expectations.
You ever been there before? You been there? I've been there. I've been in that same place. You know, who is this series really for, this panic attack series? It's actually for everyone in the room. It's for our coaches, our adults, and it's for our students. It's for everybody in the room. Because every one of us will, throughout our life, deal with this idea of spinning our wheels and maybe not figuring out how to get out of it. And all of a sudden a groove forms, and then in some way or another we find ourselves getting stuck in an idea, and we get stuck in our mind. It's for everybody. But even if you can't necessarily relate today, you find yourself moving real quickly through ideas and you don't get stuck in your head like I do. I need you to know that at some point in your life you likely will. But I guarantee this, there are people around you today, people around you at your school and in your life that do deal with this, and they're going to need you. They're going to need your help. So this will be a series important for you and maybe more important for the people that are around you. So you'll have to listen in on this. But I also want to tell you this, that there's probably for some of us this theory or this idea that, well, you know what? I bet there's a time in life when we all have it all figured out. Like as we get a little bit older, maybe there's a certain income level or there's a certain success level that we can get to, and it stops becoming a problem. And I want to debunk that myth for you real quickly. I was looking through, I have stumbled onto so many famous people and celebrities throughout the past year and a half as I've been kind of paying attention to this concept. And here I put a small list of people together that you may or may not know. These are just famous people who deal with this. This is Kevin Love. He's a Cleveland Cavaliers basketball player. He's been at it for 10 years. He's a champion. He won in 2016. He's a killer player. And you would not think that a guy like him would deal with that. This is Michael Phelps. He's the winningest Olympian in Olympics history. I mean, no one has even been close to that. Why would he worry and be stressed out? And then you got the most famous pirate. How could it be possible that Johnny Depp deals with depression and anxiety? Because everyone loves him. Everyone sees his importance. But he deals with it. This is Adele. All I can think about when I see her picture is, hello, hello. She deals with it. She's a famous singer. This is ScarJo. ScarJo deals with it. And this last one, Abraham Lincoln. That's pretty killer. Abraham Lincoln dealt with anxiety and depression. And check this out. One of the most unlikely biblical characters dealt with anxiety and depression. And I'm gonna describe for you a few of his characteristics. I bet you'll know who I'm talking about. But I don't think that most of us would have believed it was possible based on his status in life. When he was young, he killed a lion with his bare hands. Shortly thereafter, he took a giant down with a stone. He was one of the most powerful men. The Bible describes him as like really, really, really good looking. Okay, he became the king. He was a warrior. You know who it is, right? It's David. King David dealt with severe anxiety and depression. But this is a man that, if you've read the Bible before, you understand, this is a man after God's own heart. This is someone that should not deal with it. But I bet you'll be able to relate to him. All throughout his writing, you'll see glimpses of his dealing with this. But I just want to show you two places in Scripture to give you an indication of what he was going through. See if you can relate to this. This is in Psalm chapter 13. I'll go over this with you. He writes this. This is kind of like his journal entry of what's going on really inside of his mind. He says, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever?" Have you ever thought like that? Like, God, I know you know what I'm going through in my life. I know you know what's going on in my mind, but are you going to continue to leave me in that? Like, I've dealt with this for months or weeks or days or even years, and there's just been a lot of that. How long are you going to forget me? How long will you hide your face from me? Like, I'm looking for something to indicate that you're real and that you're going to show up in these circumstances, but I don't see you. I mean, I've thought about it, and I feel like I've prayed, but God isn't showing up in my mind and in my thoughts right where I need him. And he writes this, "How long must I wrestle with my thoughts? How long do I have to keep spinning my wheels over and over again?" And I know at this point in time, David starts to form a groove. He says this, "And day after day have sorrow in my heart." He must have been in his thoughts long enough that he had sorrow in his heart. What does sorrow in his heart really mean? I think, this is my opinion, I think that's David describing depression. I think he's describing a feeling that he's had because it was something that started in his mind and he wasn't able to get out of it. And then this last line, my interpretation of this last line or translation, "How long will my enemy triumph over me? How long will I be a loser?" I think that's another way of saying that. How long will I be a loser? You ever think like that? You ever thought to yourself, maybe you wouldn't tell anybody else, I'm a total loser. Now, maybe I have popularity. Maybe there's people that see a smile on my face. Maybe I'm good at faking it. A lot of us are good at faking it. But in the back of our mind, we're thinking the same thing. I can't win. I can't win in life. David was there. And David was really honest. But what David did is something we all have to zoom in on. David moved from being honest. That's where he started here, and that's a great start for us. But he went from saying something that was honest to moving to an invitation where he invited God into his battle. This is Psalm 139, verse 23 and 24. If ever you're looking for a verse to keep on your phone and glance at in the mornings when you start your day, if you're looking for a verse to kind of keep in front of you on your mirror or on a sticky note, or just to commit a verse to memory, this would be one of them. This would be a verse you'd want to commit to your memory because it's impactful. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. What is David saying? He's saying, search me and know, I don't know what's going on in my heart and in my mind, but I know you do. Can you help me figure it out? Can you help me figure out why I feel like I'm all screwed up in my head? David realizes that, and he doesn't just realize that, but he asks God for help. He asks God to invade his mind and his heart because he recognizes, hey, can you find if there's anything that's offensive in me towards you? Something that's wrong in me? How often do we stop and say, God, I don't know exactly what it is that's going on inside of me, but something is off. And then he ends this last line with this, can you get me out of it? Can you lead me towards you? He says, and lead me in the way everlasting. God, I feel like my mind has been spinning long enough. I found myself in a state of utter depression. I'm stuck, but I know you can get me out. And David realized this. David realized that the only way to deal with the battle of the brain, everybody, is by inviting God in. But this is what I think. I don't know this for sure for every one of you. I know this in my world. I think we're afraid to let God know that we want him in our battle. I think we're afraid of asking God for help and allowing him into the battle of our brain. I bet we're afraid because of a few reasons. Maybe we're afraid because we don't know what he'll do. We don't know what else he'll find. We don't know what we'll have to change or what we'll have to stop. We know that we'd have to give him some of our life, and we're not ready for that. But what if? What if we did that and he doesn't fix it? What if we ask God for help and he doesn't do exactly what we were thinking about? We're afraid. And here's what we are. We're afraid to tell God we're afraid. But I need you to know this. Listen in. We don't need to be anxious about being anxious. Anxiety is not a sin. It's said like this. Anxiety is not a sin, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy because what God is trying to teach us throughout life is to trust him. And when we're worried and when we're fearful, we just don't trust God. Do you ever not trust God with your life? You ever find yourself continually not trusting God? Well, that's not what God wants from us. God wants us to trust him. And he doesn't want us to look through life with this lens of anxiety, because when you look through the lens of anxiety, the way we see other people, the way that we see ourselves in the mirror, and the way that we see God is not the way God sees. That's why it's a tragedy. And he wants something different for our life. So what did David do? He invited God in. He invited God in. And I need you to know this. Why is this going to matter for you? Listen in. This is going to matter for you because I believe every single day you wake up and you tell yourself a story. That sounds weird. Every day you wake up and you tell yourself a story. Not outwardly, not audibly, but in your mind. You speak to yourself. You do it every day. You do it all day long. You're doing it right now. Sometimes what you tell yourself and what I tell myself are good things and true things, but more times than not, what we tell ourselves are not things of God and they're lies. And the problem with that is the more we pay attention to the lies, the more we find ourselves listening to those lies, the more trouble we get. Here's some of the things I know we say to ourselves. I'm not going to be successful today. I'm not going to win today. Some of you say these things. I wrote them down. I'm never going to change. I'm stuck in the way that I am. I'm not important. I'm not valuable to anybody. Deep down, I have friends, but I don't really have friends. God won't forgive me. God can't fix me. Or what about this? I think I'm better than everybody around me. This last one, maybe you can relate to David. I'm a loser. Those are the types of stories that we can tell ourselves, and it's subtle, and maybe you don't even pick up on it, but we can tell ourselves those things throughout the day. And the issue is, the more we start to tell ourselves lies, the more we believe them. And the more that you believe them, the more your wheels start spinning. And the more your wheels start spinning, the more the groove happens. And you've maybe felt the experience of a groove before because you felt like you can't get out and you're stuck. And the deeper that groove is, the more we get stuck. Have you ever been stuck before? Ever been stuck in your thoughts? My kids and I went camping. This was several years ago. We went up north. We head to Flagstaff, and it was around this time, it was September, and it was like rainy season. And I take this country road, this like desolate road, to go find a place where we can all camp. And I've got my pickup truck, and I'm pulling a pop-up trailer, and the road is getting a little soft. It had been raining that day, and it didn't seem like it was going to be that big of a deal. And so I keep going until I slow down, and I realize that my wheels are starting to get a little bit sloppy, and they're starting to get covered in mud. And so I try to back out. And as I back out, then the real trouble happens. My wheels start to dig in. My trailer starts to submerge into the mud. And I get out, and I'd been rocking back and forth for so long that my tires were actually underneath the mud. The mud had gone all the way up to the wheel well. And I'm by myself. It's getting close to dark. It's nighttime. And there's no one around. Like, there's no way anybody's going to come down this road and help me and my two little kids. And I don't know how to do anything. I'm not mechanically inclined whatsoever. And so I'm stuck out there. As I'm standing out and I'm looking at the truck and my kids are crying, I'm like scratching my head, literally looking at this thing. I'm like, there's nothing I'm able to do. That's all I can do. I hear this noise off in the distance. Sounds like an engine. It's this loud engine, but I can't see what it's connected to. All I hear is the sound of an engine. Well, a few more moments go by, and I see that there's a truck that's moving towards where we are, and it's the biggest truck that I've ever seen before. It's this gigantic monster truck that comes up, and its tires are as tall as I am, which doesn't sound like it's very tall, but in tire world, those are tall tires. And this guy rolls up to where we are, and he opens his door, and he steps out of the car, and he doesn't drop all the way down because he'd die. And he just looks at us, and he's got a flannel on. He's got a trucker hat. He looks real tough. He's country. Man, this boy's country. He's like, y'all stuck? I was like, yes, we are stuck. Do you think you can pull us out? And he gives me this look. Like he gives me a little look, looks at his truck, looks at the situation, does this, like, well, yeah. So he jumps down, he does whatever he does. He connects my truck to his truck, and in a matter of like 3 seconds, he backs up with ease. Like, I think he fell asleep at the wheel. It was that easy for him. And he pulls my truck out and we get out of the mud that we're in. I think we do this with God. I think what we do with God is we tell him, God, I'm not sure you can help. I'm not sure you have what it takes to get me out of the situation that I'm in. I'm not sure you can get me unstuck. And I'm not saying that God has a country accent or that he'd talk with a lip or with a dip in his lip. But I think he'd answer us the same way. Like, God, can you help? Well, yeah. Don't you know, I made you. He doesn't have dip. This series, Panic Attack, is about asking God, inviting God into the battle of the brain. So that, listen up, so that we don't have to stay stuck. And the people around you don't have to stay stuck. Because we have a God that's powerful. Here's what I know. Whether this is the first time for you, you've only been here a couple of times, or you come all the time, this will be a series that you have to prioritize. Because either you'll need it soon, or someone around you will need it. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to tackle these topics. Fear of missing out. Anybody deal with FOMO? FOMO people? There's some liars out there. There's more. Failure. Anybody deal with failure? Rejection. And the unknown. That's what we're going to deal with for the next 4 weeks. Here's what I'm going to ask of you. Make Panic Attack, make this series a priority. And let's together invite God into our battle of the brain so that we don't have to stay stuck. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for truth. Thank you that what you've given us is a way to live in this life victoriously, and we don't have to just get by. We don't have to struggle. We will struggle at times, and we will have hardship, but we know who to go to. You don't want us to live in it. You don't want us to stay in it. You want us to live powerfully. Help us to trust you. Help us over the next couple weeks to learn what it's like to trust you and invite you into the battle of the brain. We love you. We thank you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.